Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Twinkling Tooth Fairy, and I'm sipping on some peach tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you can find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, burnt umber, which I like to call brown, cobalt blue, burnt sienna, which I like to call rust, Mars black, and deep yellow. And of course you can switch those up if you'd like, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a white piece of chalk that I'm going to be using for some drawing, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 3/4 inch wide flat bristle brush, a number 8 round synthetic brush, and a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, in the video description, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the same type and size of the canvas to the same type of paints and brushes and all the good stuff in between. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're going to be painting the background. I'm going to be using my large bristle brush to paint, but I'm going to use my medium brush to mix some colors. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a nice soft dark blue up at the top, and it's going to fade down the wall into like a beige type of a color down at the bottom. So we can add some, makes it look nice and atmospheric on that wall in the child's nighttime bedroom. So I'm going to be using my medium brush to make 2 colors. I'm going to be making kind of like a beige grayish color, and then I'm going to make my blue color for the wall. So I have magically already mixed them off camera so you can see where I'm headed. So this is going to be the beige, I'm going to call it gray because it's really like a gray color, but a warm gray, so there's lots of brown in it. So how I got to that was I used a lot of brown, a little bit of white, and a little bit of black. So what I'm in essence doing is I'm making myself kind of a tan color with a little bit of black in it. So it turns it into a nice warm grayish color. So somewhere in this vicinity is what I'm going to be using for the bottom portion of my wall. I'm going to wash and dry my brush so I can mix my other color. So just washing and drying my brush. The other color is right here. So how I got to this color was I used a lot of my cobalt blue, a tiny bit of white, and a little bit of black. So what I in essence did was I'm adding gray to my cobalt blue. So it keeps it nice and dark, but it also kind of mutes it a little bit so it's not so the blue isn't as saturated as that cobalt blue. So this is where I'm headed with this, and I just recommend adding that blue and black a little bit at a time to get to that tone that you want. I'm going to use my large brush. I'm going to start at the top of my canvas with my custom blue. So I'm going to be going left to right, creating a nice coverage along the top half of the canvas. Once I get about halfway down, I will start introducing that beige color into the equation, or gray. I know I'm going to call it beige or gray. So one of those two colors. It's the same color. But once I get about halfway down, I'll start incorporating that color into the wall. And what'll happen is I'm creating this nice natural gradient down the wall. So right now I'm picking up my custom blue plus my gray color, about equal parts on my brush at the same time. And this is going to start the gradient on the wall. So I'm just kind of intermingling both of these sections in with one another so it has a nice smooth transition. And once I've got that done, what I'm going to do is now with my dirty brush, I'm just going to pick up the gray color. And what's going to happen now is the colors are going to blend together as I'm coming down the canvas. But because I did not wash my brush, that blue will work its way off of my brush, which will create a nice gradient going down that canvas. So again, right now I just keep picking up that gray, and as I come down the canvas, it's going to get the blue will work its way off, so it'll get seemingly lighter and lighter, or more gray as it goes down towards the bottom of the canvas. So just kind of keep going back and forth like that. I'll get that to blend a little bit more in a minute, but just want to kind of get the rest of this on here. And then once I've got it all on, what I'll do is I'll spend another minute just making sure that the blend is as much as I want it to. You could certainly do a second coat on this if you wanted more kind of gradual gradient to it, but what I like to do is what I'm doing right now. Just keep working that paint as it's drying. You can even do diagonal lines like that, which will merge those colors together. And then if you just go back and forth left to right, that helps to get them to look as if they're nice and blended. And then we are going to be using our piece of chalk for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away if you can ever stop. I love blending while it's still wet. It just keeps getting better and better the more I move that brush about. So once you've got this done, you can put this large brush away, take out your piece of chalk, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to be drawing an outline for our window, our sleeping young person, and our fairy. I'm going to use my chalk. I do recommend before you start this step that you make sure that your canvas is dry. So this is that time where you get to take an extra long break if you like to. Or you could find some kind of fun fanning method to get it dry. Or you can do as I did and just whip out a blow dryer and get it dry that way. So I'm going to be guiding you through a series of markers, and we're just going to connect those markers. We're just going for some nice basic shapes right now that we'll be able to utilize during the coloring and process of painting. So I'm going to start with my window. We're going to do a rectangle shape for the window. So if you find yourself about halfway, the center of the top of your canvas, you can just make yourself a little bit of a marker there. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down a little bit below my halfway mark. So if this is about halfway down my canvas, I'm about 1/2 inch to 1 inch below that. I'm going to make myself another little marker. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to come in from the edge about 3 inches, make myself a mark, and then I'll make myself another mark about 3 inches at about the same height as this one. And then you can probably guess at this point we're going to connect the dots. And you don't have to worry about it being super straight. You could certainly use a ruler, you could use a pencil, you could use whatever, tools that you want if you feel that you need this perfectly straight right now, but we're going to be painting on top of it. So if you have wobbly lines like I do, it's all right. We can fix it during the painting process. Or not fix it at all, and we'll just put a nice molding or curtain around it. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put the body blanket part on. So I'm going to come up this right hand side about, I would say, 3.5 inches, make myself a marker. And then I'm going to come down in this bottom left hand corner and come in about, I would say, 3.5, 4 inches. I'm going to connect these two with a wavy line, but I want to give you a marker as to where the highest point is going to be, which will be the shoulder of the person who's sleeping. So I'm going to come a little bit to the right of the corner of my window, and I'm going to come down about 2 inches. This is going to be the height of the shoulder. So now when I do this, I can have like a hip, a shoulder, and then I'll just have a blanket kind of rolling down the back of this person and laying on the bed. So I'm going to just kind of give myself a hip, a shoulder, and then as I come and ripple this line down, I'm really just rippling it. I'm going to kind of bring it down in through here. So this will give me some good little movement on the back of that blanket. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the head on. So I'm going to come up from here a couple of inches, or from the bottom of my canvas about 2 inches, and I'm going to give myself this curved line. This is going to indicate the edge of the pillow that the head is going to be nestled in. So I just wanted this marker so we have an idea of where the pillow is. And then if I come straight down from the corner of my window, I'm going to go to the left of that about 1 inch. This is going to be the edge of my little face. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this area to here. Maybe I'll give you another marker in through here. So if you come up here about 2 inches, that'll be the back of the head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go a little cheek like that. Then I'm going to go a little forehead like this, and I'm going to roll it into the forehead of this person. This is going to be the top of the head coming down like this, and then in through here. It's okay if it looks a little squarish or it doesn't look perfect at this point, because we'll correct that again when we're painting. I'm going to section off a tiny bit of the face away from the side of the head where the hair is going to be. So I'm just going to take this and give myself a little bit of a curved line in through here. Then I got to put my pillow on. So if I find myself about halfway on the down this left-hand side, I'm going to come down below that about 1.5 inches, make myself a little bit of a marker, and then I'm going to come in the head a little bit, right about in through here. I'm going to connect these with the corner of my pillow. So the corner of your pillow can be as ripply as you want or as straight as you want, up to you. I'm going to put my fairy up in through here. So really what I'm going to do is I'm going to start myself with a little stick figure so I can get the body started. So I'm going to start my head somewhere in through here. So this is maybe about halfway down my window and maybe 3 or 4 inches away from the edge of my canvas. I'm going to give myself a little bit of a diagonal line. This is going to indicate from the top of her head to like her rear end area. Then I'm going to give myself a diagonal line like this. This is going to be her thigh. Here's one leg like that, one leg like this, and then I'm going to put her little arm on. So a little bit back from here, I'm going to just give myself a little diagonal like that, a diagonal like this, a diagonal like this. So we're not doing much, just we're doing a little stick figure right now. I'm going to get a little circle for the head, a little circle for the bun, and then I'm going to put on a couple of wings, just so I can kind of have some information to work off of. So I think I'll put one there, maybe just the little tip of one here, and then one coming off in through here. The body, I'm just going to kind of give myself a little bit of a torso and then a little skirt kind of off here. Again, we don't need to do much. It's more about kind of that stick figure, and then she's going to have a dress, arms, and wings. So that's all I'm going to be doing for her. You can, we're going to use our medium brush for the next step, so you can put your chalk away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our sky, blanket, pillow, and person. So I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are blue, black, burnt sienna, and the gray color that we mixed in the last step. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to make myself a dark blue that I'm going to be using for my sky and my blanket. So I have already pre-mixed it so you can see where I'm headed. So this is the color I'm going for. All I did to get there was I used cobalt blue and a touch of black. And again, I caution you to add the black slowly because it can quickly take over. So you only need a teeny tiny dot of it in order to make yourself a nice dark blue. And I do have this darker than the other blue that we created earlier. So this is a little bit darker of a version. I don't have any white in it. It's just blue and black. And then I'm going to use this color to paint my sky, which will be inside my window. So I'm not using any fancy brush strokes. This is a time where you can start to clean up your edge line if you wanted to, but you're going to have a window frame, and you'll also have a curtain to cover part of the top area of it. So don't feel the need again to get these lines perfect. But I know with myself, if I kind of go quickly up and down, my hand typically will guide me in a pretty straight line. So if you want to just be carefree and kind of paint it in, know that if you go a little bit quicker sometimes, again, your hand intuition will kind of take over on those straighter lines. So you can certainly do it that way, or you can take your time. But again, the edges aren't entirely necessary to be perfect because we've got that additional step to go. I suppose you could have used a larger brush to do this too, but I just chose to use this brush because I'm going to use it for some smaller areas. So once I've got that done, I'm going to do my blanket in the same color. So I've just got that dark blue on my brush. I'm going to go right up to the edge of my blanket. We do have another step that we're going to be doing on this blanket. So again, edges aren't important, coverage isn't totally important. You just want to get some sort of layer on there that will be able to add highlights and shadows to. So I'm just going right up to the edge. I am going to leave my, make sure that I give myself this motion or movement on this edge over here. So just slowing down a little bit so I can get a little bit of that motion in through there. So then I'm going to just color in this whole area. Again, no special brush stroke, just kind of making sure that I've got a good coverage in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a coat of paint on the pillow. We already have most of the pillow in its base coat, which is this gray color here, but I want to make sure that the top part also has that color. So I'm just washing and drying my brush, and I'm going to pick up a little bit of my gray and just make sure that the top of my pillow is the same color as well. So this way it begins to separate itself out from from the wall behind it, because we're putting this more truer gray on here than that gradient that we had before. And then I'm just kind of rubbing it in. It should be pretty similar to the color down at the bottom, but if you want to just put another layer on, feel free to do so. And then I'm going to, you can even just bring it up to here. That's going to be where that pillow meets the person. You can, that line that we had for drawing purposes, you can certainly erase at this point because we know where it needed to be. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush, and I'm going to paint a layer on the face and on the hair. So I'm just going to do burnt sienna as my base coat. So a little bit of burnt sienna on my brush, and this is just going to be the base coat for my face. My face is in the dark, so I'm opting to use a pretty dark tone as my first layer to the face. I'll put some additional information on it in a minute, but just starting with my burnt sienna. So I want the face to look like it kind of disappears in the shadows, and I'm also going to be having black hair. So I'm not going to wash my brush right now. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of black paint, and I'm actually going to start this little blending process right now as I go into the hair. So I just picked up a little bit of black paint, and I'm just giving myself a soft transition from that face into the hair, and then the hair is just going to be black. So I'm going to just pick up a bunch of black, and I'm going to go ahead and paint the whole head with black, being mindful that I want the pillow to look like the head to look like it's kind of dipping down into the pillow. So I'm going to leave that line in through there, and then I'm going to paint this whole area as it's meeting the blanket, a nice black color. And again, if yours isn't perfect right now, don't worry, because we've got lots of details to go, but this is just going to get it started over here. Make sure that just kind of blends in nice and well. And as I go towards the edge of the head where the hair line is, it's all right to be kind of more carefree with that line. I like to have my, you know, it be nice and soft, so I'm not doing such a firm line on that edge, and then I'm just going to bring it all the way in through here. And then we're going to be using this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your medium brush and get ready for the next step. Alright, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint a window frame. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors that I'm going to use are my gray, black, and white. And what I'm really going to do is I'm just going to make myself another rectangle around the sky and that'll be my wood frame, and then we'll add little highlights and shadows to give it a little bit of a dimensional element, and then we'll be done. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. I am using my gray paint. I do recommend, if you want to have some nice clean lines, to put a tiny bit of water on your brush too. So you can just dip your brush in your water, tap it off on your paper towel. You could pick up, I picked up paint before, but you could pick up paint before or after you do that. That'll give you some moisture in those bristles, and it'll allow you to have a nice long continual stroke. So I'm going to start over here, and I'm just going to kind of ride along my my chalk mark that I can still see a little bit. And again, I'm trying to go pretty straight, but I can see there that I just wobbled a little bit. So my frame is going to get a little bit bigger as I go through this process. And if you really desire a perfect line, you can always use a ruler. You can mask off with some tape your lines so they're really perfectly straight. So that's going to just speak to you as your own personal artist. If you want it to be, perfectly straight or not, that's totally up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side. And you can go, cross over your sky if you want to a little bit, just so you can clean up that edge if you need to. Your paint, especially if you're using it with a little bit of water in it like I am, or liquid medium, it might be a little bit transparent or translucent, so you might end up having to do a second coat in some of the areas. But I'm pushing my brush pretty hard, which allows me to have a pretty similar width to my line. You can accomplish the same thing with like a small flat or bright brush. Those definitely can give you some nice clean lines, but when I'm using these round brushes, I tend to just kind of push them so I have a pretty similar width to my line. And then of course curtains can hide stuff, and my highlight and my shadow can disguise things, so that's looking pretty good. It's a little wide there, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and do the bottom one in through here. I'm going to bring this bottom one out just a little bit farther, so it looks like I have a little window sill at the bottom of my window frame. So I just pulled it out just a little bit further than the edge. And then I'm just going to do the same thing on this side. You could do whatever decorative kind of elements you want. You could even make it look like a window that you have in your house, or that the little person that you might be painting in this picture, maybe that little person has in their bedroom. So feel free to obviously make this into whatever is speaking to you. And then once you have that, what I'm going to do is I am going to pick up a little bit of white paint on my dirty brush, and I'm going to add a little bit of highlight. So I'm adding my highlights on the inside of these pieces of wood and on the top of this one. You could, just to indicate, because I'm going to have some sparkles coming out of my moon, but if you had a night light on or something in your little room, you could put the highlight on whatever side you feel the light source is the brightest. And then I'm just going to kind of ride down this left-hand side, something like this. If I can go all the way. There we go, right to my windowsill. And again, I've got my gray plus white on my brush, and I'm going to go down the inside of this one. So gray plus white, and I'm just kind of riding it right down. And I'm okay if like part of it is a little bit brighter or darker than the other part. That'll just make it look like it's a piece of a wood framework. And then I'll do my gray plus my white for the top of this little windowsill part in through here. And I've got the two colors on my brush, so this will allow me to have a little bit of diversity in the tonal value as I go through it. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a couple of shadows on. So I'm washing and drying my brush. I'm going to pick up some black paint. I'm just going to do a shadow on the right hand side of this frame and on the bottom of here, because I also feel that my twinkling tooth fairy over here might be casting a little bit of a light, so I'm not going to put a shadow on this side here. So I have black plus a little bit of water on my brush, again, just so I can have a little bit of fluidity when I go to do this line. And I'm going to just go right down this right hand side of this piece of framework in through here. It's going to give me just a little bit of a clean shadow right in through there, and then I'll do the same thing down at the bottom in through here. And if you put too much water on your brush, you can always just pick up a little bit more of that black paint, and then I'm just going to bring this down in through here. I think they want this one a little bit wider because I'm feeling it should be. So I'm just going to maybe a little bit up and through there too. That's doing what I feel looks right, and then just going to bring this, push my brush a little bit harder in through here. And then once I've got this done, you can certainly go back and make any little tweaks and adjustments you feel would behoove you. I might look at mine from a little bit more of a distance, maybe that. I'm not sure if that corner needs to be there or not. And then we are going to use this same medium brush for the next step, so you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our pillow and our blanket. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm going to use are black, gray, white, and my dark blue and white. And if there's any other colors I need, I'll let you know. So I'm going to start with my pillow, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of black and gray on my brush at the same time. So I have black and gray. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my shadowy creases where I feel like that pillow would be dipping down with that person's head. I'm going to put that on first, and I'll build my way to the light. So I have black and gray on my brush at the same time. I'm going to pull this out in through here, and I'm going to kind of pull it in that type of manner as it's going around the head, like the head is kind of squishing it into or pulling it down towards it. You can even kind of rub it so it's a soft line where it meets the head. I'm picking up a little bit more gray just so I can get these to work their way out into the main part of the pillow. So something like this, so it's darker down where it's meeting the head, and then it kind of gets a little bit lighter as it's going up towards the poofy part of the pillow. So something like this works for me. I'm also going to put a little bit of darkness down at the bottom of this pillow, so a tiny bit of black plus my gray, so it looks like it's really just going into the darkness. So just put a little bit of darkness down in this bottom corner, and then I just rub it in. I'll pick up a little bit of my gray to get it to blend, but I'm just looking for that pillow to have a lot of dimension to it, so putting this dark area down at the bottom is going to allow it to look like it's kind of dipping down. You can also put a little bit underneath the blanket, like the blanket might be casting a touch of a shadow on that pillow. Picking up a little bit of gray just to make sure that it blends in. And then once I've got that shadowy kind of area in there, and you can put it wherever else you feel it would work. So that's looking good to me. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up more of my gray, and I'm going to work my way towards the light areas. So the light areas are going to be where that pillow pops out the most, which for me is going to be right in through here, and then up by my my little fairy up above. So I'm using my gray right now just to make sure I have good coverage, and that I'm making it a little wet, so with the moisture of the paint, so when I go to add that highlight, I'll have it, it'll blend a little bit easier for me. I'm not washing my brush right now. I'm picking up a little bit of white, and I'm going to put my highlights on. So I'm putting a little bit of a highlight in through here, not necessarily right next to the head, but a little bit away. And this will make this part of the pillow look like it is popping out the most. And then I can just use my brush to spread it out a little bit. And if it doesn't spread out as far as you want it to, you can always put a little bit of moisture on your brush or a little bit more of that gray paint. So I'm going to put a little bit of white plus a touch of my gray on my brush so I can just get it to go a little bit farther, because I wanted it a little bit farther than that. So I picked up a little bit more of the gray plus white in order to get this area to pop out a little bit farther through the pillow. So that'll just make it look like it's fluffier and it's got more dimension to it. A little bit lighter right in through here. I picked up just a little bit more white, and I'll do the same thing with the top of the pillow too. So it's just a matter of just building yourself to the lightest area and getting that to make it look like it's popping out. I'm going to go up top here right now with a little bit of white to start. So I'm going to put my brightest area on. I'm going to say mine's going to go right in through here, and then I'll start moving my brush in a circular type of manner to kind of pull it out or distribute that light color throughout the pillow. And then I'll pick up my gray so I can get it to blend in a little bit more. So without washing my brush, I picked up a tiny bit of gray, and this will get it to blend in with that bright area. And then again, if it doesn't work out exactly as you had planned, just let it dry for a minute, and then you can put another layer on it or finagle it as much as you want. So once you've got the pillow done, we're going to move right on to that's looking pretty poofy and fluffy. We're going to move right on to the blanket using the same process. So I am going to wash and dry my brush so I can have a clean palette on my brush, or a clean brush. And I'm going to do the same thing with here. I don't really need much shadowy areas, but I want to make sure where I do have the dark areas that I've got a good coat of paint. So I'm going to pick up some of my dark blue. I definitely want to make sure that I have a good coat down at the bottom area. So I just picked up a little bit of dark blue. I suppose you could use some black. Actually, I'm going to use a tiny bit of black too. I'm going to use a tiny bit of black just at the bottom of this blanket, just so I can get it to go a little bit darker, where it's kind of dropping down on the side of the bed, I guess. So something like that, maybe a tiny bit back over in through here. Now I'm just going to pick up my dark blue, make sure that I've got good coverage down in this bottom area and in the midsection of the blanket, and then we'll just start adding the highlights. The blanket's pretty dark already, so we don't really need to do much, but the adding this second coat on a lot of it is going to help us to build that highlight in a nice, believable way. So I'm going to have my highlight on the hip. It's going to kind of come down here. I want it to look like the blanket's kind of wrinkly, and on the shoulder is going to be the brightest highlight as well. And then I'll put some strategic kind of wrinkles. So I'm going to put my dark blue plus white on my brush. I'm going to put my biggest highlights in through here. So I'm using both the dark blue and white on my brush at the same time, because I know that the white is going to be pretty darn powerful. So I'm using it with the blue as well. I'm going to put maybe a wrinkle in the blanket in through here. So these are going to be where my brightest highlights are, and I can kind of put them on there. And then I can plan out where my other ones are going to go. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my dark blue. I didn't wash my brush. This is going to allow me, since I have a little bit of that white on my brush, it's going to allow me to kind of start pulling out these highlights in a way where the blanket will look like it's got movement to it. So again, I've got these highlights up here. I want a little bit of a highlight on this upper area where the shoulder would be, so somewhere in through here. All these light areas are going to tell the viewer what's popping out the most. So as I'm working my way down, I still want to have highlights, but they don't necessarily have to be as bright as those ones. So again, my dark blue plus a tiny bit of white will allow me to get these additional kind of movement areas in the blanket to make it look like it's got more volume to it. I need to kind of fill in this area in through here. That was some of my dark blue. So I keep going back and forth between my dark blue and my white right now, and any combination thereof. I'm putting my lighter areas in the areas that I want the blanket to pop out. So maybe there's a wrinkle back here. Oops, I just noticed I had yellow on my brush. Hold on a second, just washing and drying it. So my dark blue plus a tiny bit of white will give me a nice little wrinkle back here. And if you go a little bit too bright, just bring back some of that, the dark blue in there. This is looking pretty good. Maybe a little bit more up in through here to make it look like there's a little bit of a ripple on there. And then you just kind of keep fiddling with it. So I will probably let mine dry a minute and see if there's any additional areas that I want to make brighter or make my blanket pop out any more. If you feel like the person looks flat, then that means you might want to bump out where the shoulder is. In through here, you can see I'm kind of playing with mine a little bit more so it can bump out, or maybe the hip area. So you could I put some more blue and white on my brush, or my dark blue and white. You can get this to look more voluminous if you just make it a little bit lighter. So that's how you're going to get these areas to look like they are popping out and that they have a person under them. And then once you've got this done, we're going to use our small brush for the next step. So you can put this medium brush away, make any little adjusting that you want, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our little person. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are brown, rust, white, and black. And if I use any other colors, I'll let you know. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the essence of the little side of the face with maybe a couple little eyelashes and a little highlight on the skin. And then we're just going to put a little highlight on the hair and give ourselves a little bit of movement and shape to the head with some strategically placed highlights. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first do the face. I'm picking up a little bit of my burnt sienna, so I make sure that I have a good second coat and that there's no unpainted skin, and I'm making sure that it blends into that hair a little bit, or into the hairline a little bit, because I'm going to just put some pieces of hair over that in a minute. So I'm just, kind of getting it to blend in, so when that hair is over it, it'll look nice and realistic. And then as I come towards the front of the face, I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna and white on my brush. I'm going to give myself give this person a little glow on their cheek right in through here, and then pick up a little bit of my burnt sienna and just rub it back into that cheek. So this is just a little tiny glow on that cheek to indicate that it's being lit up by the glowing, atmosphere. Then I'm going to I wipe my brush off. I'm picking up a tiny bit of black paint. I'm going to give myself a little eye, a little sleeping eye with some cute eyelashes coming out. And you don't have to do much. I have a tiny bit of water on my brush. You can really make this into, resembling a little person that you know. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit more, I wipe my brush off, I'm picking up a little bit more burnt sienna and white on my brush. I think I want a little bit more of a highlight on the forehead too. So maybe just a little bit of the burnt sienna and white on this forehead, just so it doesn't feel left out if there's a little piece of hair, that just that you can see through or something. So that's looking good to me. And of course you can reshape that face whatever way you want. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some hair on. So I'm just going to wash and dry my brush. The hair is just carefree. This person is sleeping. I'm starting with a little bit of black on my brush so I can give myself a couple of carefree pieces on the outside, maybe resting against the pillow. You can I'm not going to do anything here because this is where the pillow is, but I definitely, or the front of the pillow, unless you have long hair, you could certainly drape some long hair over, but I'm just going to put a couple of little pieces that are just, resting on this back section of the pillow. And then I'm going to pick up a bunch of brown on my little brush, and I'm going to start giving myself the some directional brush strokes that are going to lead the viewer to understand that this head is round. I'm going to pick up a little bit of black and brown also and put a couple of pieces draping over the face of this little person. So a little bit of black and brown will give me some carefree pieces just coming out this forehead. And I'm just kind of allowing myself to manipulate these little pieces of hair. I'm going to put in, if you were trying to emulate curly hair, you could certainly do some little wavy pieces. You can bring this as much in front of the little person's face as you want. It's up to you. It's your cute little person dreaming and hoping that they're going to get a little treasure from the tooth fairy. And then I'm going to just I picked up more brown so I can get this little highlight going in the front of the head with some extra movement to it. And you know, if you felt that you wanted a different color, you want to pull it back further, feel free to do so. Now what I'm going to do, that I've got the brown on there, I'm going to pick up just a teeny bit of white paint on my dirty brush, and I'm going to give myself a couple of little beautiful highlights on the front of this head. And I'm bringing it in a curved manner so it allows the viewer to understand that the head is curved. You don't have to do this 100%. I'm really just kind of bringing these carefree strokes down. I just picked up a little bit of brown on my dirty brush so I can get it to transition maybe into some pieces coming over in through here that aren't as bright as this brightest highlight. And then you just kind of keep finagling it a little bit. And once you've got it in the brightness that you want, if it's too bright, you can certainly add some darkness back to it. But once you've got it where you want it, we are going to be using this same small brush for the next step. So you can just wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to do the base coat for our fairy. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are yellow, burnt sienna, and probably some brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be doing a base coat for her dress and her wings with yellow. We'll do her hands and her legs and her face with burnt sienna, and then we'll do her hair. I haven't decided if I'm going brown or black. I'll let you know when we get there. So I'm going to start with her clothing. So I'm going just yellow paint. It's going to be translucent, transparent. It's not going to look awesome after this step, but trust me, I'll get you to an awesome place. So I'm just going to bring this down her torso in through here with my yellow. You may even still see your chalk underneath, which is totally fine because we'll get that to disappear in a little bit. I'm going to bring this down for her skirt. Remember, gravity takes over in situations like this. So I'm going to bring her skirt is going to come almost straight down, and I'm giving these little kind of fun, almost like little just pointy edges to her skirt in through here. You can do yours whatever way that you would like, but this is how I'm going to do mine. I think I'm going to bump this up a little bit for her rear end like that. I'm going to also give her yellow sleeves on her dress. So I'm going to bring her arm down like this. So when I do her arms, I'm going to make the line a little bit wider at her top part of her arm. And then the bottom part, you don't have to make wider. You can just kind of ride right along that chalk and do the same thing for this one in through here. Then I'm going to do her, excuse me, her wings again are just going to be yellow. And you could, as you're doing yours, if you decide that you want to use different colors, feel free to do so. This is just something I thought would be nice and complementary with my glow and with the colors of, you know, the surroundings. So you can certainly make yours into whatever way or colors that you would like. I'm going to do the same thing for this wing in through here. And then I'm also going to give her a yellow little carrying case for her little thing that she is collecting from this person who's sleeping. So I'm just making myself a little kind of basket of sorts, but you could again make anything that you like. Maybe you represent the, you know, the treasure that she's delivering as opposed to picking up from him or her. And then I'm going to make a wand. So I'm disconnecting these just a little bit from the hand because we're going to be putting a little tiny hand on there in a second. And I think this is pretty good for the distance. Then I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put on some skin. So washing and drying my brush, I'm going to use my burnt sienna as the base coat, similar to how I did on my person. So burnt sienna, I'm going to just give little tiny hands that are holding this and holding the wand. So just little kind of oval type of shapes for the face. I'm going to just give her a little bit of a neck, and then I'm just coloring in the bottom portion of my oval, and I can pop out a little chin and a little tiny nose. If you want there to be a little shape on it, you can totally just, you know, the nose is a little bit smaller than the chin. And if it goes too much, just bring back some of your background color for your wall. And then on the legs, I'm just going to have her legs coming out of her dress like this. And she's got oops, that was a little bit of white on my brush. Let me just wipe that off. So we've got the calf in through here, then it comes into a little foot over in through here. So again, if you have your chalk mark is too wide, just color around the chalk mark and you can always erase it later. I'm going to bump out a little heel in through here, and then I'll wait for that chalk or the paint to dry and I'll erase that chalk. And then over on this side, I've got the leg coming out the dress in through here. And then right about here's where I'm going to start her foot. So I just bump out, oops, that's a little bit too much paint on my brush. Or you can just go all the way to the toe, make yourself a line to the toe, and then just bump out a little spot for that heel. And that's going to give you the essence of a fairy foot. Now I'm going to wash my brush. I think I'm going to pick up black for the hair now that I'm seeing it. I think I want some good contrast. So I'm just going to give a black bun in through here. We'll put some other colors on it in a minute, but just black for that, and then black for her front part of her head. And you can get this to kind of go into her hair or into her face, whatever way that you want. I'm going to give a little bit of front part there, and then it's just going to kind of come down along the back side of her head like that. And we'll put some other colors on it in a little bit. We're going to use our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the glow and the curtain. So the glow is going to be coming from our tooth fairy and from the sky. So they're going to kind of connect to each other. I'm going to be using, and of course the curtain's going to be on the window. So I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are yellow, gray, black, and I think that's it. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to put my glow on. I'm going to be using yellow paint. My yellow is transparent or translucent, so you're going to be able to see right through it, and I'm going to be applying it in a scrubbing type of way. So I'm going to have it kind of coming from her into the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start over in through here, and I'm just going to start rubbing it in these areas that I want it to be. And you can see all of my other information underneath it because it is transparent or translucent. So as you're doing yours, if you're finding that yours isn't as see-through as mine, or you did too much and you want to do less, you can certainly add a little bit of water to it. I'll just demonstrate so you can see. I added a little bit of water to it, and you can almost scrub it off because the water will lift it right off of that canvas. So if you find a spot where you're like, oh, I did too much in through there, you can certainly back it off by doing something like that. I'm going to be bringing it all the way over to my fairy, so it can even go in front of her. We still have details to do on her later, so don't worry about that. I want it to definitely come down from my my wand and stuff. So I'm going to bring some down in through here, and I want it to look as if it's glowing on my little person. So I'm going to bring it right over that pillow, over the head. You can even kind of get it to come out, spread out as far as you want it to. I'm going to do a little bit coming off of my wings, so a little bit up in through here, so it just makes it look like my fairy is the glow kind of creator of sorts. So I'm coming off her legs in through here, so just a little bit is making this beautiful glow happen. Maybe just making sure I've got it as far in here as I want. Then I'm going to go ahead and do my curtains. So my curtains, I'm going to be using my gray. I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to be applying a little bit of water on my brush with my gray to start. I'm going to just give a nice ripply kind of edge to it. And I want it to be a little see-through. So I'm going to come out on the right-hand side, maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch. Just bring this down like this, and do the same thing over on the left-hand side. Just bring it out past my window a little bit like this. And then I'm going to do a ripply line. So I'm going to take this and just kind of wave it like this. That's going to give me the edge of my the edge of the curtain, and then everywhere where the bump goes up, I'm going to be pulling the lighter part of the curtain up. So something like that. You can also fade this line. If it's still a little wet, you can fade that so it looks like it's just kind of part of the curtain. I'm going to make these bump parts a little bit brighter in a second. Right now I'm just using my remnants on my brush to get this to look nice and transparent. I'm going to pick up a little bit more of my gray paint so I can have some dark or some more full areas. So I picked up a little bit more of that gray paint. So these areas again that are bumping out a little bit further, that have a bump here, I can add just a little bit more of this, and it's going to make it look nice and like it's got some shape to it. And again, you could have yours one solid color if you want. I just felt that it would be kind of neat to be able to see that sky through it. So you can obviously make yours in whatever way that you want. And then I'm just going to do a couple of little decorations on it. So I want a little shadow underneath, so I picked up a tiny bit of black paint. I'm going to just make sure that I have a little bit of a shadow underneath on my window sill, or my my frame of my window. So something like this, just a tiny bit. Again, this is just one of those add a little bit of dimension. And then I'm going to pick up my dark blue. I don't think I said I was going to use dark blue, but I'm picking up dark blue to put a nice decorative kind of colored edge along my curtain. And of course you could put polka dots, you could have whatever information that you want, and then you just kind of keep tweaking it if you want any other information. I might make mine a little bit lighter at the top, so I just washed and dried my brush. I'm putting that gray back on my brush just so I've got it turned a little bit darker than I had expected as it dried, because I used that water in it. So I just added a little bit more of that gray and just kind of amping up these areas just a smudge. And then we are going to be using we're going to use our our small brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to finish our fairy. I'm going to use my small brush. The colors that I'm going to use are black, white, yellow, and brown. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some strategic highlights and shadows to give her a little bit of shape and some glow and make her defined. So I'm going to start with her skin areas. I'm going to do her legs. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of black paint, and I'm going to give a little bit of a shadow on the side that I feel is the darkest. So I feel like the light is on the bottom. So I'm going to put the dark side on the top of her legs. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of black paint up on the top side of her leg, maybe a little bit on the back side of her foot in through here. These little details of sorts will help to give these small pieces of a painting details, and it helps to just kind of finish it up a little bit. I just picked up a little bit of burnt sienna to get this to blend in a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white for these legs in order to get them to have the highlight. So I just wipe my brush off. I'm picking up a tiny bit of white paint to give myself a little bit of a highlight on the side that I feel would be glowing, which is this bottom side. I'm going to pick up a little bit of burnt sienna just to get that bright glow to blend in. And then of course, if you had any little tweaks that you needed to do, you could certainly, I just need to pull this in a little bit of water, help me pull that in. There we go. And then I'm going to go onto her hands and her face. So again, tiny bit of black on my brush just to give myself little details. Like if I wanted a little tiny eye, I could put a little bit of little eyelashes. If I felt that I needed a little shadow on that neck, I could put just a little bit of darkness back in through there. Her hands, I don't really need to do much. So I'm just going to now pick up my burnt sienna to make sure that I have her face fully colored in here. I'll put a little bit of a highlight in a second, but right now just kind of making sure that I've got good coverage. Her hands are just going to get little tiny highlights. So I'm picking up a tiny bit of white paint to give her little button nose. Actually, white plus my burnt sienna. I don't want this to go too bright, so white plus my burnt sienna. Just give her a little tiny edge to her nose, maybe a little tiny edge to her chin, and of course it doesn't have to be perfect. Maybe a little bit on her forehead, a little bit on her fingers, so just little tiny dots of brightness. She's got a little hand here holding her wand, so you know, I'm not even doing much. I'm just giving the essence of a little hand. That was burnt sienna. I'm picking up burnt sienna and white. I think I want some little maybe nut like the fingers in through here. So just a little burnt sienna and white just to pull down maybe a couple little fingers or something like that. That works. I think I'm going to put a little bit more lightness on her face too, just to give her a little tiny glow, maybe on her cheek of sorts. Yeah, there we go. Put a little bit more burnt sienna. So I just kind of, when I'm doing stuff like this, like to you know, fiddle with the little highlights and shadows in order to get it to look the way that I want. And this is such a tiny little detail here. I don't need to do much, but you know, if you want those details to show, just getting that little pop of a brightness or little bit of a fingertip in there will work. I'm going to do her hair with a little bit of brown, just giving a touch of, again, just shape to her head, maybe a little bit on her bun in through here. Now maybe a touch of white, similar to how I did the little guy or the little sleeping person, just a little bit to give myself just the essence of something, you know, a little highlight here and there. Now I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to tackle the objects in her dress. So I'm going to start with black on my brush. I'm going to do these two objects down here. So a little bit of black over on the left. This is going to give me just a little shadow of sorts. I'm going to put a tiny bit down the wand, just a itty bitty bit. Then I'm going to pick up my yellow and give myself a nice finished coat on here. And then I'll put a little bit of white as a highlight. So I'm picking up a tiny bit of white, and I'm going to give a nice bright highlight over here on the right hand side, bottom kind of this one. And then just a little stripe going down that. I'm going to do her dress now, so I'm going to pick up a little bit of black paint. I'm going to put it on the on her back, so somewhere in through here, and give a little bit of darkness on the top side of these of her skirt, a little bit on the back side of her arm in through here. Now I'm going to pick up yellow just to get this to blend in. And I keep wiping my brush off just so I can make sure that these colors kind of blend and work together. And right now I'm just picking up my yellow in order to kind of get this a good second coat on here. I'll put a little bit of white in a minute just to give myself a little bit of a highlight. This is her shoulder in through here. And if you come to a point where you're like, this isn't working out exactly as I had hoped it would, you can certainly, you know, keep building your layers on it. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of brown right now to give myself a little bit of a shadow in the crook of her arm in through here, maybe a little bit in through here without going totally black. So I just picked up a little bit of brown. So that's another thing that you could do too, is in this process using a little bit of brown as a shadow maker would work as well. And then now I'm going to pick up yellow plus white on this underside of the dress. So yellow and white, going to give her her front area in through here, and then I'll just playfully pull out the tips of the skirt with yellow and white. And this is where, you know, you can show a lot of movement to the skirt, making sure that it kind of covers any edges that might have been unfinished looking. And I'm using a good amount of both the yellow and the white so I can get some good coverage and some good movement in through here. I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom side of her arm. So yellow and white is just going to give me a little bit of a highlight in through here. And if I felt maybe a little bit in through here, just a little bit. That's the other arm back there. And let's see, I think I need to put a tiny bit of finessing on the shoulder here. So I just picked up a little bit more yellow and white just because I didn't feel that it was fully finished in through there. And then I'm going to do my wings. So tackling them the same way, wipe off my brush, pick up a little bit of black, put some black on the back or underside of them. So I'm feeling like I'd want some darkness in through here and where it meets her neck. In through here, maybe a little bit as it's coming right out her back in through here. So just getting everything to kind of merge into each other. And then I'm gonna start picking up my yellow to get everything to blend in. So yellow is going on my brush right now to blend this in with the black and with that mid-tone section of it. And then I'm going to just, again, carefree with my white and yellow, give myself some beautiful little tips to the wings. And of course, your wings can be whatever way that you want. These are fantasy-esque style wings, so you can have fun with how you want them to appear. Maybe yours are lighter or darker. I think I want more darkness in the center here. I wipe my brush off. I'm picking up a little bit more black. I want this to be just a little bit darker in through here. I don't want it to steal the show. So I picked up a little bit more black. And then you just do any little fiddles that you feel might be necessary. And we're going to be using our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can put this small brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're going to paint the moon and the sparkles, or stars, whatever you'd like to call them. So I'm using my medium brush. You could certainly use a combination of your medium and your small brush. Wherever your comfort zone is totally fine. I'm going to be using mostly white, but I will use a little bit of yellow at the end as well. So what I'm first going to do is I'm going to be putting my moon in place. I'm going to be using white paint with a tiny bit of water on my brush. And what I like to do in order to get my brush to be nice and pointy is I will take my paint on my brush and then spin it on the side of my palette. That gives me a nice pointy brush. And then I'm going to have a crescent type of moon, but you could certainly have a full moon or whatever you'd like for your moon to look like is totally fine. You could use an aid when it comes to drawing out your moon. You could freestyle it, whatever works for you. I'm just kind of going to take my time. I'm making mine a little bit wider at the bottom portion of it, but I'm trying to make it so it would appear to be a normal moon. That would be, if it was a full moon, it would be of a circular shape, but if it doesn't get exactly that way, it's okay, because it's kind of like a dreamy painting that can have some fantasy style things to it, which means it does not have to be 100% accurate. So that's looking pretty good. I'm doing a thin coat of paint, so it'll dry pretty quickly, and if I need to add another layer to make it brighter, I certainly can do that. And then I'm going to add a whole bunch of twinkles and stars and stuff. So I want to have a couple of, actually that looks a little, hold on, just making it a little wider in through here. I'm going to have a whole bunch of little twinkly stars that will be not just polka dots. I'll do some polka dots in a little while, but I'm going to make some that are kind of like little starbursts. So for me, I like to just kind of make myself a little dot, and then you can kind of pull it in different directions and give yourself this little bit of a twinkle. And you can make as many of them as you want. You can make, you know, little tiny ones way off in the distance. You can make big ones up close, but if you make that little kind of mark in the middle, and then you can just kind of pull out little string or little tiny pieces on the sides of it. I'm going to make a few of those, and then I'm going to make a whole bunch of little tiny dots. So when I'm doing stuff like this, if I know that I want to have some of these little starburst things, I will sometimes just do them first, so that way I don't get lost in the 1,000 little tiny dots that I want to make everywhere else. Maybe I'll make another little one in through here, and they don't all have to be the same size or doing the same thing. This is your painting, you can do as you want. I'm going to do like a starburst coming off of the end of my little wand, or maybe just some brighter sparkles. And again, you could certainly make yours into whatever you want. I'm going to do these little tiny bursts coming out, make it really have lots of energy coming out. So just these little tiny lines, and I'm hardly touching my canvas. So it gives me these little lines. I think that's as many starbursts as I want. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself little sparkly dots coming out of her. So I know I want, oops, my canvas just moved a little bit. I know I want little tiny ones coming out around her feet. So maybe something like that. A couple little tiny ones coming out her feet. So when you're doing something like this, if you want it to have life and movement and make it look like, you know, has lots of energy to it, you instead of doing these sparkly marks everywhere, if you have a plan, like, okay, if they're coming out of her, maybe they come out around her head, maybe they come out around her feet, and just kind of using those thoughts and having kind of a little bit of a plan, that'll make it look more like it's thought out and it's got energy to it, and you know, things are coming out of, you know, certain places for a reason. You know, they're coming out of her wand, they're coming out from around her because she's the one who's got the magic in this whole painting. So I've got some coming out of, you know, her powerful little tool that she's carrying. So and it makes sense in my, you know, in my tooth fairy brain. I'm going to reload my brush and put some coming in kind of a trail going in through here. So this is going to guide the viewer to understand where they came from or where they're going to. So that's where this kind of trail is going off into the sky. And maybe these are coming right from the moon, or maybe they're coming from the galaxy, or, you know, from the fairy. Whatever you want them to be, that's, you know, totally up to you and your imagination. And then I'm just going to kind of put them in through here, and after I get them all on, I am going to add a few yellow ones so it looks like they are getting glowy as well. Maybe a couple more in through here just to get this to really look like it's coming over the window. Maybe a couple of little tiny ones off in the distance, maybe even one behind that curtain. This little faint one back there, maybe a second one behind that curtain. Sorry, sometimes I do things that are probably not totally necessary, but I feel it at the moment, so I go ahead and do it. So now that I've got this on here, I'm actually going to wash my brush because I want to put a little bit of a glow on some of these, which I think maybe a couple off of her skirt too. Boy, when you start doing glow dots, it's really tough to stop. So I'm going to wash and dry my brush. I'm going to put a tiny bit of yellow paint on my brush so I can get maybe a little bit of glow on the edge or the sides of my moon. So maybe a little bit of yellow in through here. And again, it's just one of those things that if you want to add something special like that or give it a little bit more energy, something like that can do it. Now I picked up a little bit more white to make sure the inside of my moon is as bright as I want it to be. So I added that glow, then I put a little bit more white on my brush just to make sure that that's got the dimension I want. And then I'm going to just pick up a little bit more yellow and make myself maybe a couple more yellow dots just to kind of maybe yellow and white on my brush, yellow and white on my brush. So I can have different values in these bright sparkle dots. And then you just kind of keep playing with it. If you feel that you want to do any more, now's the time to do it, making all of these, pretty dots make sense. I'm going to pick up a little bit more white, and you can even just keep adding to the white. Like if I want the centers of any of these to be brighter, I can just add like this real bright pop of white right in the center of them if they haven't dried as bright as I want them to be. And then I just keep fiddling. We are going to be using our small brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your sparkly stuff on here, you can put this medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I typically sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I think I'm going bottom left on this one with black paint. I like to sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be is totally fine because it's your painting and you get to sign it however you'd like. And that's going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a very dreamy image, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.